Hey, you all. Mariah sent me an email saying it could be helpful if I went over some of those questions that I sent to you in a video. This is specifically about the Being Tutored paper, which I think is a really fun paper to read. I really enjoy it. So let's talk about them just very briefly, and then I'll show you a model of a paper just to give you some ideas about ways that you can lay out yours. So first things first, what if I feel like I don't have a paper to bring to the Writing Center? One of the things that I tried to do from the very beginning of this assignment is stress one thing. That is, you authentically want to revise this paper. Now, there could be any number of things. There could be any number of texts that you use that you'd authentically want some feedback on. Let's think about those things. First things first, some of you might be in Erin Kelly's class or one of her classes. I know that there is a paper coming up in there, and you may have just turned one in, but you want to revise it. Or you may just be about to turn one in, but you want to revise it. In any case, what you're doing then is you're asking for specific feedback guided to that teacher's values or beliefs, or to the other kinds of things that they have put in their prompt that you think are important. You want a Writing Center tutor's feedback on those things. But what are the other kinds of things that might exist in our writing lives that could be useful for a kind of an assignment like this? Many of you are seniors. Let's just think about it. Could be all kinds of texts that you're getting ready to start writing because they are going to be on your mind once you graduate. They could be things like a resume, a statement of purpose for graduate school, a cover letter of some kind, application materials for grad programs. There could be scholarships or other kinds of things that you're putting together right now, and know that there are scholarships, Chico State scholarships, that have a writing sample attached to them. This could be for one of those things. Or there could be other documents that you're thinking about putting together in a portfolio to show the kind of writing that you're going to do in the future, or that you'd like to do, right? So any of those things could be useful to create a kind of an environment where you legitimately have questions that you legitimately ask a Writing Center tutor, and you can all have a great discussion. The opposite, that is, let's just imagine a terrible situation or a terrible text, could be something like you got an A on a paper several years ago and you're just dredging it up to bring to the Writing Center. You know what they're going to do? They're going to say, we know what's going on. We know you're in Chris Foson's English 431 class. We know that this assignment is being tutored. But you know what? We can't help you on a paper unless you legitimately want to revise. That's what I hope they say. Or they'll say, listen, you got an A. It's kind of done, right? I mean, there is no A plus in this Chico State system or in the whole CSU system. You can't get A pluses unless you intend to publish it, which may be a different kind of question. We can't really help you. Now, that could be the third thing that you consider. That is, you did really well on a paper, but you want to take it one step further. There are literary magazines here at Chico State in the English department that you might be familiar with. There are literary magazines other places. There are literary magazines across the country that publish undergraduate work, and I can point you to several in composition, rhetoric, and literacy studies. That's another option to take, but you see what I'm doing here. The legitimate one for this assignment is the one that you authentically want to revise for a purpose that becomes clear to the Writing Center tutor. Second question, I've had trouble setting up an appointment. Best thing to do is go to the Writing Center website and click on the link. If you're not hearing from them, click on the link again. If you're still having trouble, please contact me and I can contact the coordinator of the Writing Center directly. She and I are on a committee together and we're getting to know each other. So that would be great. We will have no problem getting you in to see a Writing Center tutor, I think, by the time that this paper is due. What does the paper look like and how is it structured? Now here is where I'm going to share my screen. So you see, this is a copy of the Being Tutored paper from 2 semesters ago, from February 2020, interestingly enough. And here we are. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through some of the comments that I made and some of the moves that the writer makes. And what I hope that'll help you see is this is an eminently doable paper, but also here are some of the things that I see when I start to read this paper. I will also give you give you a link to this paper so that you can see it, review it on your own, just as you're getting your mind together on what you're going to do. So you see, with a paper like this, On Being Tutored is a perfectly fine title, but you can be as creative as you want. You really drop me into the scene. You don't waste any time with a opening paragraph that says there are many things that one has to consider as a writing center tutor, because that's not your purpose, right? You're not writing an expository essay or an argument of some kind. You are narrating a story. So the best thing to do is to begin the story, to say, there I was in the jungle. Now, it might be a little bit harder because, of course, we're remote this semester. So you haven't left your home, really, but you're meeting somebody for the first time. So you might describe your feelings. You might describe the context. You might describe how you selected a paper to share with this person. You might describe the process for signing up for one of these appointments and what happened next. Here is me. I attended a drop-in tutoring session. The assignment was to write several statements up to 300 words each, answering each standard scholarship question about volunteer experiences, career goals, personal benefits a scholarship would bring, and so on. Okay, so I do want details about the assignment. Why? Because as we'll discover in this class, how you approach a paper depends on how the paper has been set up, how a teacher has assigned a paper, what kinds of things they've talked about in class, and what ultimately the assignment prompt says for a student to do. This person goes on, at the time of the tutoring session, I had 4 out of my 5 responses started. The 5th was the one I felt most stuck on. So here, as I say, very authentic, is where I see, okay, this is real. This is an authentic situation. This person wants a scholarship. What I wanted the most feedback on was the organization of my individual statements and general critiques, along with ideas for connection or expansion of what I already had. Then we go, entering the writing center for the first time. I found myself feeling quite nervous for what was to come, but the tutoring session itself dispelled all of that anxiety about having someone else look over and give feedback on my work. What I've noticed over the years of teaching English 431 is that when I ask students to do this assignment, many times they have not had a writing center experience themselves. They have never been in the hot seat, as it were. They have never shared their work with someone else and asked for feedback. So it's a fascinating situation where we're asking them to become tutors without having been tutored first. That is, of course, one of the purposes of this assignment. So what we see starting right here is, of course, the author is narrating the experience with all of the details that they can provide about the kinds of things that happen. She wrote my list down on a whiteboard because I wanted an outside perspective. I asked that the tutor read the piece. Each time we moved on to the next section, the tutor read my writing aloud before answering specific questions I had. So that's me. I'm reading this. I'm saying, this is great. I'm enjoying all of this detail. That's another question that's coming up. I enjoy detail. The critiques, however, were mostly editing based. What I noticed about my run-on sentences, the tutor also noticed, but then did not go beyond that. Okay, interesting. We're turning our attention here to the styles or strategies that the tutor employed. Now, it may be a little hard to take notes on an experience that you're having at the same time that you're having it, but do try to make some mental notes in your head and maybe go back to it later. As soon as the tutorial is over, break out a piece of paper and jot down everything you can remember about everything that happened, right? And that'll be a good way to start writing this paper, is to work from those details. What we also see in this situation is that this writer is turning specifically to the kinds of strategies that the tutor used and trying, in some ways, to align them with the kinds of conversations we had had in class by this point, right? So they are setting up the kinds of connections that they're going to make to the materials that we've read so far in class. You'll notice that part of my assignment is to connect at least twice to something we've read. They continue on. Instead of giving her own suggestions, the tutor mainly asked me what I thought of my writing after she read sections aloud. I say, should we try to diagnose this? Maybe. What do you think about that? Do you think this is good or bad? Or what do you feel about the moves that this tutor is making? I'd like to learn more about that. This led me back to think to how exactly questioning functions in a tutoring session, how effective the question is in conversations about a piece of writing. Thomas Flynn states that making declarative statements about the writing, especially paraphrases and using imperative sentences, often invites longer, more reflective responses. Okay, great. So that was English major level connection, because what is happening? This person is not just dropping in a quote. This person has set up the need for a quote before they get there. Very cool. A moment happens in the tutorial. The picture I have in my mind as it's being narrated to me is the narrator, the writer of this paper, is just about to make a connection and then does. Using that reflective process to say, well, I don't know if this is a good move, or I do know that this is a good move, or whatever. If the tutor, this person goes on to say, had instead made such declarative statements, I think I would have felt more readily able to explain my writing and speech in a way a tutor can understand. Okay, so a gentle critique. The purpose is not to say, I liked it, I didn't like it. The purpose of this paper is to say, okay, so what is happening and how do we understand it in terms of theories and practices of working with writers one-on-one. That is the kind of the subtitle for this class. By doing so, this person says, I predict I might have derived new meaning or at least found new ways to word what I already had on the page. Okay. Another connection happens in this paragraph right here. And you're seeing basically, I think, a good structure for this essay. That is, we make these connections when the moments happen in our narration. That is, when the thing happens that you think is worthy of commentary, you can just jump in there and say, hey, this reminds me of a reading we had in week 1 called whatever it turns out to be. By the end, there's a little more reflection going on. You'll see the final couple paragraphs, I'd say this one, my tutoring experience, and overall, I'm not sure whether I would label this a successful tutoring session, are that final part of the paper where I'm asking you to say, okay, so based on what you experienced, what are the kinds of practices that you might like to pick up as a tutor yourself? How does this being tutored help you grow in terms of your abilities working with writers at a variety of different stages of the writing process? So then, what you see through this is that I am trying as hard as I can to be an active reader, to respond to your essay at the point at which it was presented to me, and to give you different kinds of ways of making sense of the essay so that it can be revised. Now, finally, what I would say, I will stop sharing right here, is this. The final question that I had was, will we get a chance to revise it? I've already gone over how much detail does Chris want? A lot. So the final thing that I would say is this. You turn in the paper right before spring break, and that's good. You could just have a wonderful spring break, do what you want to do, take some time off, catch a breather. We're all in a pandemic still, and things are very shaky in a lot of ways. So self-care is important. I will read them over spring break and I will return them to you. And then we'll figure out if they need to be revised, what kind of timetable are we working with? Generally speaking, what I would say is that we're going to reach a drop dead deadline, maybe about like the middle of April or something like that, where I won't accept any more revisions of this paper. But what I want to see is some active revision going on. And I'm going to set up a process so that we can look at each other's drafts and give each other feedback on our drafts, just like I'm going to give feedback on yours. So what this means is, in short, I will give you a kind of a tentative grade based on what I'm seeing so far. If you'd like to revise it, that's great. I will work with you one-on-one to revise the paper as many times as you would like to revise it until we're both totally happy with it. And then we'll go from there. But I'm fully intent on everybody doing well in this class. And I think it's important that we trust each other and be kind to each other this semester, because it's been a difficult one for a lot of people. So that's the long and the short of it. If you have other questions, I am totally willing to work with you one-on-one or meet you in a Zoom, and we will go from there. Okay, thanks.